The rain had turned the forest road into a ribbon of mud, winding through ancient trees that seemed to close in tighter with every mile. The battered hatchback crawled along, its headlights barely piercing the mist that clung to the ground. In the driver's seat, Maya gripped the wheel, her knuckles white, her heart pounding with a mix of dread and hope. In the back seat, her son Leo pressed his face to the window, wide-eyed and silent, watching the world turn from gray to green, and then to the deep, shadowy brown of the old-growth woods. They had been driving for hours, the city and its noise left far behind, replaced by the hush of rain and the promise of something, anything better than what they'd left behind. Maya's mind raced with doubts. The letter from the lawyer had seemed like a cruel joke at first, a distant relative she'd never met, a house in the middle of nowhere, a deed with her name on it, but with nowhere else to go, no money for rent, and no one left to call. She'd packed what little they owned and set out for the only hope left. The directions had grown stranger with each turn. Left at the fallen cedar. Continue until the road disappears. Look for the stump that touches the sky. Maya had almost missed it. A colossal tree stump, wider than a city bus, rising from the earth like the remains of a giant's throne. Moss and ferns clung to its sides, and a narrow wooden door was set into the base, half hidden by tangled roots. She stopped the car, heart pounding, and stared at the impossible sight. Leo's voice broke the silence. "Is that it, Mom? Is that our new house?" Maya forced a smile, though her stomach twisted with fear. "Yes, sweetheart. This is it." They stepped out into the rain, boots sinking into the soft earth. The air was thick with the scent of wet leaves and old wood, and the forest pressed close on all sides, as if guarding the secret of the stump. The door was heavy, carved with swirling patterns that looked almost like runes, and the key from the lawyer's envelope fit perfectly in the lock. With a groan, the door swung open, releasing a breath of air that was somehow warmer than the world outside, but tinged with the scent of earth, sap, and something metallic, something ancient. Inside, the house was dim and silent, the only light coming from narrow windows cut into the wood. Furniture stood draped in white sheets like ghosts waiting for the living to return. The air felt thick with secrets, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Maya set down their bags and listened. Somewhere beneath the floorboards, she thought she heard a faint rhythmic sound, a pulse, a hum, or maybe just the settling of the old roots. But as she looked around, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting for them here. Something hidden, something precious, something that could change everything. She pulled Leo into her arms, whispering a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. "We're safe now. We're home." But as the rain drummed on the roof and the forest pressed in, Maya wondered if the house was truly a refuge, or the beginning of a mystery that would test them in ways she couldn't yet imagine. It hadn't always been like this. There was a time, not so long ago, when Maya's world was filled with the ordinary chaos of school runs, grocery lists, and bedtime stories. She'd had a job she didn't love but could count on, a tiny apartment with peeling paint but a view of the city lights, and a son who believed the world was safe and full of possibility. But life, Maya had learned, could unravel with terrifying speed, and the safety nets she'd always assumed would catch her had holes she never saw coming. It started with the layoff. The company had been struggling for months, rumors swirling like autumn leaves, but Maya had clung to hope. She was good at her job, reliable, efficient, the kind of person who stayed late to help others finish their work. But when the pink slips came, her name was on the list. The severance was barely enough to cover a month's rent, and the job market was flooded with people just like her, hard-working, desperate, and invisible. At first, Maya tried to shield Leo from the truth. She packed his lunches with a smile, walked him to the bus stop, and spent her days scouring job boards at the library. But as the weeks stretched into months, the bills piled up. The landlord's patience wore thin. The fridge grew emptier. Maya sold what she could. Her mother's old jewelry, the TV, even Leo's outgrown clothes. She told herself it was temporary, that something would come through, that she just needed a little more time. The eviction notice came on a Thursday, taped to the door in bold, impersonal print. 30 days. Maya read it 3 times before she let herself cry. Silent tears in the bathroom while Leo watched cartoons in the next room. She called every number she could find. Friends, family, social services, but help was always just out of reach. Her parents were gone. Her brother lived 3 states away and barely scraped by himself. And Leo's father was a ghost, sending the occasional birthday card but little else. They moved into the car first, telling Leo it was an adventure, a camping trip. Leo was old enough to sense the truth, his eyes searching his mother's face for reassurance. Maya parked in church lots, behind grocery stores, anywhere they wouldn't be noticed. She learned which gas stations had clean bathrooms, which shelters had the shortest lines, and how to make a dollar stretch until it snapped. The hardest part wasn't the hunger or the cold. It was the shame. The way people looked through her, the way Leo's laughter grew quieter, the way hope became a memory she could barely recall. Maya kept a notebook in her purse, scribbling lists of jobs, shelters, and dreams she was afraid to speak aloud. Every morning, she woke before dawn, watching her son sleep, and promised herself she'd find a way out. One night, after a particularly cold rain, Maya sat in the front seat, her hands wrapped around a cup of gas station coffee, staring at the dashboard. Leo slept in the back, curled under a pile of blankets. The radio played softly, a song from Maya's childhood, and for a moment she let herself remember the girl she used to be, fearless, full of plans, certain the world would bend to her will. She wondered what that girl would think of her now. It was in that moment, as she watched the rain streak the windshield, that her phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar, the area code from a place she'd never been. She almost didn't answer, but something in her gut told her to pick up. "Hello, is this Maya Carter?" The voice was formal, practiced, but not unkind. "Yes, this is Maya. My name is Richard Evans. I'm an attorney with Evans & Price, representing the estate of Mr. Samuel Alder. I believe you're his granddaughter?" Maya's mind raced. She remembered her grandfather only vaguely, a quiet man who'd sent Christmas cards with crisp $20 bills tucked inside. He'd lived alone, somewhere up north, a relic of another era. "I'm sorry to inform you that Mr. Alder passed away last month. In his will, he named you as the sole beneficiary of his property in Alderwood. I know this is unexpected, but if you could call my office, we can discuss the details." Maya hung up, her hands trembling. She stared at the phone, then at her sleeping son, and felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in months, possibility. She called the number the next morning, her voice shaky as she spoke to the lawyer. He explained that the property was a house built inside a giant tree stump, left to Samuel by his own parents decades ago. It wasn't much, he warned, but it was paid off, and the taxes were current. If she wanted it, it was hers. The next days were a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and cautious hope. Maya scraped together enough for gas, packed what little they had left, and pointed the car north. She told Leo they were going on an adventure, that they'd have a place to call their own. Leo asked if there would be a bed for him, if he could have his own room. Maya promised she'd do her best. As they drove, Maya's mind spun with questions. What would they find? Was it even safe? Could she turn a strange underground house into a home? But beneath the fear was a stubborn thread of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, this was the break they needed. The journey was long, the miles ticking by in a blur of highway signs and rest stops. They sang songs, played games, and watched the landscape change from city to countryside to the lonely stretches of forest that marked the edge of the world. At night, Maya lay awake in motel beds, listening to her son breathe, and dared to imagine a future where they belonged somewhere again. By the time they reached the muddy road that led to the tree stump house, Maya was exhausted, but determined. She gripped the steering wheel, her heart pounding with fear and anticipation. Whatever waited for them beyond that mossy door, it had to be better than what they'd left behind. And as the house loomed into view, strange and silent against the green shadows, Maya whispered a silent prayer for strength, for luck, for a chance to start over. She didn't know what secrets the house held, or how it would test her in ways she couldn't yet imagine. But as she looked at her son, his face pressed to the window, she knew she'd do whatever it took to give them a home, even if it meant facing the ghosts of the past, the darkness of the unknown, and the weight of a legacy she'd never asked for. Maya sat in the car, the engine ticking as it cooled, her hands resting on the steering wheel. The tree stump house loomed before her, half shrouded in mist and moss, its door a dark oval in the tangled roots. Leo was quiet in the back seat, hugging his knees to his chest, his breath fogging the window. The silence between them was heavy, filled with the unspoken fears and fragile hopes that had carried them this far. Maya's mind raced with questions. Was this really a chance at a new beginning? Or just another dead end? The lawyer's words echoed in her memory. "It's not much, Miss Carter, just an old house in the woods. But it's yours, free and clear." She tried to picture what not much meant in the context of their lives. Was it better than the backseat of a car? Better than the endless shuffle from shelter to shelter? The constant fear of being turned away? She thought of the nights spent parked behind supermarkets, the mornings spent washing up in gas station bathrooms, the way Leo had stopped asking for sleepovers, the way Maya had started to dread the sound of her own phone ringing. But this was different. It was a place, a structure, a roof. It was also a relic of a time when families built homes to last generations. when secrets could be buried as deep as the roots of the forest? What would it mean to raise her son in a place built for survival, not for living? What would it do to them, to her, to call a house like this home? She stepped out of the car, boots sinking into the mossy ground, and walked to the door. The wood was cold beneath her hand, the carvings rough and strange. She pushed it open, the hinges shrieking in protest, and peered inside. The air was thick with the scent of earth and sap, but it was dry, and the walls looked solid. She flicked her flashlight across the space, imagining beds in the corners, shelves for food, a table for homework and meals. It would take work, more work than she'd ever done, but it was possible. Maybe. Maya returned to the car, her mind racing. She thought of the risks, the isolation, the unknown dangers, the possibility that the house was uninhabitable. She thought of Leo, his need for stability, for friends, for sunlight and laughter. She thought of herself, of the exhaustion that clung to her bones, the hope that flickered and threatened to go out. Was she strong enough to do this? Was she foolish to even try? Leo's voice broke the silence. "Mom, are we staying here?" Maya turned, meeting her son's gaze in the rearview mirror. She saw fear there, but also trust, a trust that Maya would do what was best, that she would keep them safe. Leo waited, his small hands twisting the hem of his coat. Maya took a deep breath and opened the car door. She walked around to Leo's side, opened the door, and knelt in the moss. "I don't know what this place will be like," she said softly. "It's not what I imagined, but it's ours. We can make it work if we try. It won't be easy, but I think we can do it together." Leo nodded, his eyes shining with a mix of fear and excitement. Maya stood, drawing a deep breath. She walked back to the house, this time with purpose. She explored every room, making mental lists of what needed fixing, what could be salvaged, what might be possible. She found a small wood stove in the kitchen, dusty but intact. There were water pipes, old but unbroken. The walls were thick, the windows heavy with old glass. It was safe, at least from the world outside. She returned to the car one last time, gathering their few belongings. She carried Leo's backpack, her own duffel, the bag of groceries, and the battered suitcase that held everything they owned. Together they crossed the threshold, stepping into the unknown. That night, as they huddled together on the floor of the main room, Maya listened to the rain drumming on the roof and felt, for the first time in months, a fragile sense of hope. The house was cold and empty, but it was theirs. It was a chance to build something new, to reclaim a future that had seemed lost. Maya lay awake long after Leo had fallen asleep, staring at the ceiling, her mind filled with plans and worries and dreams. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or what secrets the house might hold, but she knew this. She had chosen to stay, to fight, to hope, and that, she realized, was the first step towards something better. The first morning in the tree stump house arrived with a silence so deep it felt almost sacred. Maya woke to the faint glow of daylight filtering through narrow windows carved into the thick wood, her breath visible in the chilly air. Leo was still asleep, curled beneath a pile of blankets, his face peaceful for the first time in weeks. For a moment, Maya let herself believe they were safe, that the worst was behind them. But as she sat up, the reality of their situation pressed in from all sides. The house was colder than she'd imagined possible. The ancient wood stove in the kitchen was their only hope for warmth, and Maya had to coax it to life with the last of the firewood stacked by the door. She wrapped herself in her coat and boots, then set out to explore, determined to understand what they were up against. The house was a labyrinth of rooms and tunnels, each one darker and damper than the last. The main living area was round, with a ceiling that arched high above, the grain of the wood swirling in dizzying patterns. A spiral staircase, carved directly into the wall, led down to a lower level where the air grew colder and the light dimmer. Maya found a small kitchen, a pantry with shelves built into the roots, and a bathroom with a clawfoot tub that looked as if it had grown from the stump itself. Every surface was coated in a fine layer of dust, and the air smelled of earth, sap, and something metallic she couldn't quite place. She found the pantry surprisingly well stocked, the shelves lined with jars of preserves and canned goods, some so old their labels had faded to nothing. The refrigerator was unplugged, but the cold was enough to keep their meager groceries from spoiling. Maya made a mental note to ration everything carefully. She didn't know when they'd be able to get to town again, or if the road would even be possible once the rains returned. Upstairs, the bedrooms were just as she'd left them the night before. Beds stripped bare, closets empty except for a few moth-eaten coats and a trunk of linens that smelled faintly of cedar and lavender. The bathroom was functional, though the pipes groaned in protest when Maya turned the tap. She let the water run until it cleared, grateful for the small mercy of indoor plumbing. Leo woke mid-morning, shivering but eager to explore. Together, they moved from room to room, Maya pointing out the quirks and charms of their new home. "This was probably the study," she said, showing Leo a small room with a desk built from a thick slab of root. "And this must have been the master bedroom. Look at that view." But the house was not without its dangers. The floors creaked ominously in places, and Maya found a section of hallway where the boards had rotted through, revealing the dark earth below. She marked it off with a chair, warning Leo to stay away. In the lowest level, she discovered a maze of storage rooms, some filled with old furniture and trunks, others empty except for the echo of their footsteps. The air down there was colder still, and Maya felt a prickle of unease as she moved through the shadows. The hardest part was the isolation. The forest pressed close on all sides, the trees so dense they blocked out the sun by mid-afternoon. The nearest neighbor was miles away, and the only sounds were the wind in the branches and the occasional creak of the house settling. Maya checked her phone, no signal. The landline in the kitchen was dead, the wires chewed through by time or animals. They were truly alone. As the day wore on, Maya set to work making the house livable. She swept floors, aired out the bedrooms, and started a fire in the main room's stone hearth. Leo helped where he could, his small hands red with cold but eager to please. They hung blankets over the windows to keep out the drafts and piled every spare quilt and coat onto their makeshift beds. By evening, the house felt a little less alien, a little more like home. Maya cooked a simple meal of soup and bread, and they ate by candlelight, the flickering flames casting long shadows on the walls. Leo told stories about the forest, inventing tales of magical creatures and hidden treasures. Maya listened, grateful for her son's imagination, for the way he could find wonder even in the bleakest circumstances. That night, as they huddled together in the main room, Maya listened to the wind howl outside and felt a strange sense of peace. The house was still cold, still full of secrets and challenges, but it was theirs. For the first time in months, Maya allowed herself to hope that they could make it work, that they could build a life here, in this strange, forgotten place, and turn it into a home. The first week in the tree stump house was a test of endurance, resourcefulness, and faith. Maya quickly learned that survival in this underground world was not just about shelter from the elements, but about facing a new set of dangers and doubts that threatened to unravel her fragile hope. The cold was relentless. No matter how many fires Maya built, the warmth never seemed to last. The house was vast, and the heat from the wood stove and fireplace barely reached beyond the rooms they occupied. Maya rationed the firewood, but the pile dwindled faster than she'd expected. She bundled Leo in layers of sweaters and blankets, but still the child's lips turned blue in the mornings, and his hands were always cold to the touch. Maya's own fingers grew cracked and raw, and her joints ached from the chill that seeped into her bones. Food was another constant worry. The pantry's jars and cans were a blessing, but Maya knew they wouldn't last forever. She made careful lists, planning meals with the precision of a field general, stretching every crumb and drop. The nearest town was a 2-hour drive on a good day, and the rain made the road nearly impassable. Maya tried to keep her anxiety from Leo, but the child noticed the way her mother's eyes lingered on the emptying shelves, the way she measured out portions with a trembling hand. The isolation began to wear on them both. Days passed without seeing another soul. The forest was beautiful, but it was also a prison, the trees pressing close, the silence broken only by the wind and the occasional distant crack of a branch. Maya tried to keep Leo occupied, reading books, playing games, inventing stories, but the child grew restless, his laughter fading as the days grew shorter and the nights longer. It was during one of those long, dark nights that the first real danger appeared. Maya was awakened by a strange sound, a deep, groaning creak that seemed to come from the very bones of the house. She sat up, heart pounding, and listened. The sound came again, louder this time, followed by a sharp crack. She grabbed a flashlight and crept into the hallway, her breath clouding in the cold air. The floorboards beneath her feet felt different, softer, as if something had shifted below. In the morning, Maya discovered the source of the noise. A section of the main room's floor had buckled, the old wood warped and splintered. She knelt to inspect it and found that the ground beneath had shifted, likely from the rain and the slow decay of the roots. The damage was worse than she'd feared. A gaping crack ran the length of the room, and when she pressed on the boards, they gave way, revealing a dark, earthy void below. Maya's heart sank. She had no idea how to fix something like this, no money for repairs, and no one to call for help. The next day brought another setback. Maya ventured outside to gather more firewood, only to find the shed nearly empty. The previous owner must have stocked it for a single person, not a family trying to survive a brutal season. Maya tried to chop more wood from the fallen branches around the property, but the axe was dull, and her hands were clumsy with cold. She worked until her arms ached, but the pile barely grew. That evening, as Maya struggled to light the stove, Leo came to her, eyes wide with worry. "Mom, what if we run out of wood? What if we can't stay warm?" Maya forced a smile, but inside, fear gnawed at her. "We'll be okay, sweetheart. I promise." But the promise felt hollow. The challenges weren't just physical. The emotional toll of their isolation and hardship began to show. Leo grew quiet, his usual curiosity dulled by the monotony of their days. He missed his friends, his school, the routines of their old life. Maya tried to keep his spirits up, but she too felt the weight of loneliness pressing in. At night, she lay awake, listening to the wind and the creaks of the house, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. Then came the first sign of hostility from the outside world. It happened on a gray afternoon when Maya decided to brave the road to town for supplies. The drive was treacherous, the car slipping and sliding on the muddy track. When she finally reached the small general store, she was met with wary stares. The woman behind the counter, bundled in layers, eyed Maya with suspicion as she rang up the groceries. "You're the one who moved into the old Alder place, aren't you?" she asked, her tone flat. Maya nodded, trying to sound cheerful. "Yes, that's us. I'm Maya, and this is my son, Leo." The woman's lips pressed into a thin line. "That house has been empty for years. Folks around here say it's cursed. Bad things happen to people who stay there too long." Maya tried to laugh it off, but the words stuck with her. As she loaded the groceries into the car, she noticed a group of men standing by the gas pumps watching her. Their conversation stopped as she approached, and one of them spat on the ground, his eyes cold. "Best be careful out there," he said. "The woods don't take kindly to strangers." Maya drove home with her heart pounding, the groceries rattling in the back seat. She tried to hide her fear from Leo, but the child sensed it. That night, as the wind howled and the house creaked, Maya lay awake, wondering if the townspeople's warnings were more than just superstition. The days blurred together, each one a battle against the cold, the hunger, and the growing sense of unease. Maya found herself jumping at every sound, checking the locks twice before bed, and keeping the axe close at hand. She started to notice things she hadn't before, footprints in the mud that didn't match her own, the faint smell of smoke on the wind, the feeling of being watched when she ventured outside. One evening, as Maya was bringing in firewood, she found a note pinned to the front door. The paper was damp and the handwriting shaky, but the message was clear. "You don't belong here. Leave while you still can." Maya's hands shook as she read it. She looked around, but the forest was silent, the moss undisturbed. She tore the note down and stuffed it in her pocket, forcing herself to act normal for Leo's sake, but the fear lingered. Maya began to question every decision she'd made. Was she putting her son in danger by staying? Was the promise of a home worth the risk? The house, once a symbol of hope, now felt like a trap, its secrets pressing in from all sides. The final blow came when Leo fell ill. It started with a cough, then a fever that wouldn't break. Maya did her best, bundling him in blankets, making tea from the herbs she found in the pantry, reading stories to distract him from the chills. But the nearest doctor was hours away, and the road was impassable with mud. Maya sat by her son's side, holding his hand, praying for the fever to break. As the days passed, Maya's hope began to fade. She felt utterly alone, cut off from the world, powerless to help the person she loved most. She thought of her grandfather, of the generations who had lived and died in this house, and wondered if she was strong enough to survive. But just as Maya was about to give in to despair, a new sound broke the silence, a faint, rhythmic tapping from somewhere below the house. At first, she thought it was her imagination, the product of too many sleepless nights. But the sound persisted, growing louder, more insistent. Maya followed it through the house, down the spiral stairs, into the cold, dark lower level. There, in the far corner, behind a stack of old trunks, she found a section of wall that sounded hollow when she knocked. The tapping seemed to come from within, as if something, or someone, was trying to get her attention. Maya's heart pounded as she pressed her ear to the wall, listening. The sound was unmistakable now. A pattern, a message. She didn't know what it meant, or what she would find if she kept searching. But in that moment, Maya felt a flicker of hope, a sense that the house was trying to tell her something, that the answers she needed were hidden just beneath the surface, waiting to be discovered. And as the wind howled outside and Leo slept fitfully upstairs, Maya made a silent promise. She would not give up. She would fight for her son, for their future, and for the truth buried in the heart of the ancient tree stump house. Whatever secrets the house held, she was determined to uncover them, even if it meant risking everything. The tapping in the lower level haunted Maya for days. Each night, after Leo finally drifted into a feverish sleep, Maya would creep down the spiral stairs, flashlight in hand, and press her ear to the cold, root-laced wall. Sometimes the sound was there, steady, deliberate, almost like Morse code. Other times only silence greeted her, broken by the distant groan of the house settling in the damp. She tried to convince herself it was just the pipes, or the wind, or her own exhaustion playing tricks. But deep down, Maya knew the house was trying to tell her something. On the third night, Maya decided to investigate further. She moved the trunks aside, revealing a patch of wall that looked subtly different from the rest. Less worn, the wood and rootwork newer, the grain swirling in a pattern that almost looked intentional. She tapped along the surface, listening for a hollow echo, and her heart leapt when she found it. There was a space behind the wall, she was sure of it. But how to get through? She searched the basement for tools, finally settling on a rusted crowbar she found in the old coal bin. With careful, determined effort, she pried at the edges of the rootwork. The work was slow and grueling, her hands numb with cold. But at last, one root shifted, then another, until she'd opened a small gap just wide enough to reach through. Inside, her fingers brushed against something smooth and cold, a metal box. Maya's breath caught as she pulled it free, dust and cobwebs trailing from its corners. She carried it upstairs, setting it on the kitchen table beneath the flickering light. Leo, pale but curious, watched from his nest of blankets. "What is it, Mom?" "I don't know yet," Maya whispered, her hands trembling as she worked the old latch. The box creaked open, revealing a stack of yellowed papers, a leather-bound journal, and a bundle of faded photographs tied with string. Maya opened the journal first. The handwriting was elegant, looping, and old-fashioned. The first page was dated March 1939. "To whoever finds this, know that this house was built on secrets.
My name is Samuel Alder, and I have done things here that must never be forgotten, nor ever be repeated." Maya's eyes widened as she read on.
The entries spoke of the war, of men arriving in the dead of night, of shipments hidden in the forest, of a root chamber constructed beneath the house, deeper than the visible cellar, accessible only by a hidden door. The journal described how Samuel, an engineer by trade, had been recruited by the government to design a shelter that could withstand anything: bombs, fire, even the passage of decades. He wrote of gold, crates of it, delivered under armed guard, sealed away in the root chamber as a hedge against catastrophe. If the world falls, this gold will help rebuild it. But if peace endures, let it remain hidden, a secret kept for the good of all. Maya's hands shook as she turned the pages. The later entries grew more paranoid. Samuel wrote of strangers in the woods, of threats and warnings, of a promise to his family that the secret would die with him. The final entry was dated 1957. "If you are reading this, then the world has changed. Trust no one. The key is in the old clock. The door is beneath the roots." Leo, sensing his mother's excitement, sat up. "What does it mean, Mom?" Maya tried to explain, her voice hushed. "I think there's another room in the house, a shelter, and something important is hidden there." They spent the next day searching the house for the old clock. It was Leo who found it, tucked away in the study behind a stack of books, a heavy brass mantel clock, its face cracked but still ticking faintly. Maya turned it over and found a small compartment in the base. Inside was a tarnished brass key, cold and heavy in her palm. Armed with the key and the journal's clues, Maya returned to the lower level. She examined the space beneath the roots, running her hands along the rough wood. At last, her fingers found a seam, a hairline crack in the rootwork. She pressed, and a section of the wall shifted, revealing a narrow door, almost invisible in the gloom. The key fit perfectly. With a deep breath, Maya turned it, and the door swung open on silent hinges. A rush of cold, stale air greeted her. She shone her flashlight into the darkness, revealing a steep set of steps descending into the earth. The walls were lined with root and stone, the air thick with the scent of metal and secrets long kept. Maya hesitated, fear warring with curiosity, but Leo's small hand slipped into hers, steady and brave. "Let's go, Mom," he whispered. Together, they descended into the hidden chamber. The room at the bottom was larger than Maya expected, its walls lined with shelves and crates. In the center stood a table, and on it, a map of the property, marked with cryptic symbols and notes in Samuel's handwriting. Maya's eyes darted around the room, taking in the details: the heavy steel door at the far end, the ventilation shafts, the emergency supplies stacked neatly in the corners. But it was the crates that drew her attention. Each was stamped with a government seal and a date from the 1940s. Maya pried one open, her heart pounding. Inside, nestled in straw, were gold bars, dozens of them, gleaming dully in the flashlight's beam. Maya gasped, her mind reeling. The journal had been telling the truth. The fortune was real. As Maya and Leo explored the chamber, they found more clues, documents detailing the gold's origins, letters from government officials, and a ledger listing names and dates. The story that emerged was one of wartime fear, of desperate measures taken to protect the nation's wealth, of a family sworn to secrecy for generations. But the discovery brought new fears. Maya remembered the warnings in the journal, the threats from the townspeople, the feeling of being watched. She realized that others might know about the gold, that the danger was far from over. The house's secrets were now her burden, and she would have to decide how to protect them, and her son, from those who would do anything to claim the fortune for themselves. That night, as Maya sat by the fire, the gold bars stacked on the table before her, she felt the weight of history pressing down. The house had given up its secrets, but at a cost. The mystery had deepened, and the stakes had never been higher. Maya knew that the hardest choices still lay ahead, and that the true test of her courage was only beginning. The discovery of the root chamber and the gold changed everything for Maya, but it also brought a new kind of fear. She knew she couldn't keep such a secret forever, not in a town as small and insular as Alderwood, where every newcomer was noticed and every rumor spread like wildfire. The next morning, Maya woke early, her mind racing with questions. Who could she trust? Who might already suspect that the old tree stump house was more than it seemed? Her first instinct was to keep Leo close and avoid town, but his fever had left him weak, and Maya knew he needed medicine and fresh food. She bundled Leo in layers and drove the muddy road to the general store, her heart pounding with every mile. The same woman was behind the counter, her eyes sharp and curious. "Back again so soon?" she asked, her tone softer than before. "How's the little one?" Maya hesitated, then decided on honesty. "He's been sick. I could use some advice. Do you know a good doctor nearby?" The woman's expression softened. "I'm Ruth. My brother's the nurse at the clinic in town. I'll call ahead for you." She rang up Maya's groceries and added a jar of homemade soup to the bag. "On the house. Winters are hard here. We look out for each other, even if we don't always show it." Maya felt a wave of relief. Maybe not everyone in Alderwood was an enemy. As she left, she noticed one of the men from the gas station watching her from across the street, his arms folded, his gaze cold. Maya hurried Leo into the car and drove away, the sense of being watched prickling at her skin. That afternoon, Ruth stopped by the house with her brother, Nurse Tom. They checked on Leo, offered advice, and left behind a bag of medicine and a promise to return. "If you need anything, you call us," Tom said, his voice firm. "Don't let the old stories scare you. That house has always been a part of Alderwood, even if folks like to pretend otherwise. But not everyone was so welcoming." The next day, Maya found muddy boot prints on the porch and a second note, this one more direct. "You don't know what you're sitting on. Leave before it's too late." That night, she heard a car idling at the end of the driveway, headlights cutting through the trees before vanishing into the darkness. Maya double-checked the locks and kept the crowbar close at hand. The tension in town grew. At the post office, a man Maya didn't recognize cornered her by the mailboxes. "You're the new owner, right?" "Alder's granddaughter." His voice was low, almost friendly, but his eyes were calculating. "That house has a history. People say there's more to it than meets the eye. You planning to sell?" Maya shook her head, trying to keep her voice steady. "It's just a house. I'm not going anywhere." He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Everyone's got a price. Remember that." Word spread quickly that Maya had no intention of leaving. Some neighbors kept their distance, whispering behind her back. Others, like Ruth and Tom, became unexpected allies, dropping off food, firewood, and advice. Maya learned to tell the difference between genuine kindness and curiosity laced with greed. One evening, as Maya was bringing in wood, she found a stranger waiting by the gate. He was older, with a weathered face and a badge clipped to his coat. "Sheriff Dalton," he introduced himself, just checking in. "Folks around here get nervous when the old Alder place is occupied. You settling in all right?" Maya nodded, wary. "We're managing." He studied her for a long moment. "You let me know if you have any trouble. This town's got its share of busybodies, but most folks mean well. Still, if anyone gives you a hard time, you come to me." Maya thanked him, but as he walked away, she wondered if the sheriff was truly on her side, or just another set of eyes watching, waiting to see what she would do. As the days passed, Maya realized that the house's secrets were not just hers to bear. The gold, the chamber, the history, they were all tied to the community, to old wounds and old ambitions. Some people wanted to help, others wanted to profit, and a few would do anything to claim the fortune for themselves. Maya knew she couldn't face it all alone. She leaned on Ruth and Tom, grateful for their friendship. She kept Leo close, teaching him to be careful with strangers and to trust his instincts. And every night, as she locked the doors and checked the windows, Maya promised herself that she would protect her son and their new home, no matter what enemies might be, lurking in the shadows of the ancient woods. The days after discovering the gold were a blur of anxiety and vigilance. Maya kept the secret chamber hidden, but the weight of what she'd found pressed on her every moment. She slept lightly, always listening for footsteps outside, always watching for unfamiliar faces in town. Leo, still recovering, sensed her tension and clung to her side, his questions about the house growing more insistent. Maya tried to reassure him, but she knew that the real answers, the ones that mattered, were still buried somewhere beneath their feet. One rainy afternoon, as Maya sorted through the documents from Samuel's journal, she noticed something she'd missed before. Tucked between the pages was a folded sheet of parchment, brittle with age. On it was a series of numbers and symbols, arranged in a pattern that looked almost like a puzzle. At the bottom, in Samuel's careful script, was a single line. For those who seek, the answer lies where the roots remember. Maya stared at the words, her mind racing. She thought of the root work in the lower chamber, the way the wood and earth seemed to twist in deliberate patterns. Was there more to the chamber than she'd found? She called Leo to her side, showing him the parchment. Together they traced the numbers and symbols, trying to make sense of the code. Leo's eyes lit up. "Mom, look. The numbers match the books on the shelf." He pointed to a row of dusty volumes in the study, each one labeled with a faded number. Maya's heart pounded as she pulled the books down, arranging them in the order from the parchment. When she pressed the spine of the last book, there was a soft click from somewhere below. They hurried to the lower chamber, following the sound. In the far corner, where the roots twisted into the wall, a small panel had slid open, revealing a hidden lever. Maya hesitated, her hand trembling, then pulled the lever. The ground beneath their feet vibrated, and a section of the floor slowly shifted, revealing a narrow spiral staircase descending even deeper into the earth. Maya shone her flashlight down the steps, the beam swallowed by darkness. The air that rose up was colder, tinged with the scent of metal and secrets long kept. Leo squeezed her hand, his voice barely a whisper. "Should we go down?" Maya nodded, her fear mingling with excitement. "We have to. This is what Samuel wanted us to find." They descended the staircase, the walls narrowing as they went. The roots here were thicker, woven together like the ribs of some ancient beast. At the bottom they found a heavy iron door, its surface etched with the same symbols from the parchment. Maya pressed her palm to the center, and the door swung open with a groan. Inside was a chamber unlike anything Maya had ever seen. The walls were lined with shelves, each one stacked with ledgers, maps, and more gold bars, far more than she'd found above. But what caught her eye was a large leather-bound book resting on a pedestal in the center of the room. She opened it, her hands trembling, and found page after page of detailed records, not just of the gold, but of the people who had hidden it, the deals struck in secret, the promises made and broken over generations. The final pages were written in Samuel's hand. "If you have found this, you are the last of us. The gold is yours to protect, but its true value lies in the truth it represents. Use it wisely. Do not let greed or fear guide you. Remember the cost of secrets and the power of hope." Maya stood in the secret root chamber, the weight of history and possibility pressing down on her. She realized that her family's fortune was not just in gold, but in the choices she would make from this moment on. The discovery was a turning point, not just for their survival, but for their future. As she and Leo climbed back up to the shelter, Maya felt something shift inside her. The fear was still there, but now it was joined by determination. She would not run. She would not hide. She would face whatever came next, armed with the truth and the knowledge that she was not alone. The house had given up its greatest secret, and now at last, Maya was ready to claim her place as its guardian. The days after the discovery of the root chamber were filled with a strange electric hope. Maya felt lighter, more purposeful, as if the house itself had finally accepted them. She made plans: how to secure the gold, how to document everything, how to quietly seek legal advice without drawing attention. But just as she began to believe they might truly have a future here, the world outside their underground sanctuary closed in. It started with a knock at the door one evening, just as the sun was setting behind the trees. Maya's heart leapt into her throat. She peered through the narrow window and saw Sheriff Dalton standing on the porch, his breath clouding in the cold. But he wasn't alone. Behind him stood the man from the post office, the one with the calculating eyes, and two others Maya didn't recognize, their faces hard and closed. Maya opened the door a crack, her body blocking Leo from view. "Evening, Sheriff. Is something wrong?" Dalton's voice was gentle, but there was a tension in his jaw. "Mind if we come in, Maya? We need to talk." Maya hesitated, but the men pushed past her, filling the entryway with the scent of rain and earth. The man from the post office spoke first. "We know about the gold. You think you can just waltz in here and keep it for yourself? That house belongs to this town. To all of us." Maya's blood ran cold. "I don't know what you're talking about. "Don't play dumb," he snapped. "We've been watching you. We know you found something down there. You're not the first to try and claim Alder's secret." Sheriff Dalton stepped between them, his voice low. "Let's keep this civil. Maya, these men represent some of the old families in Alderwood. They believe the gold is part of the town's legacy. There's talk of legal action, of contesting your right to the property." Maya's hands shook. "This was my grandfather's house. He left it to me. I haven't done anything wrong." The third man, older and heavier, sneered. "Maybe not yet, but you will if you try to take what isn't yours. We're prepared to make things very difficult for you, Maya. You and your boy." The threat hung in the air, heavy and unmistakable. Maya felt Leo's small hand slip into hers, trembling. She drew her son close, her mind racing. She thought of the gold, the secret chamber, the journals, everything she'd worked so hard to protect. It could all be taken from her, just like that. The men left as quickly as they'd come, but the damage was done. Maya spent the night pacing the house, checking the locks, peering out into the darkness for headlights or shadows moving among the trees. She barely slept, haunted by the knowledge that she was no longer safe, that the house was no longer a sanctuary. The next morning, the real blow fell. Maya woke to the sound of shattering glass. She rushed to the kitchen to find the window broken, icy wind howling through the gap. On the table was a rock wrapped in a piece of paper. The message was simple: leave now, or next time it's fire. Maya's hands shook as she cleaned up the glass, her mind spinning with fear and anger. She called Ruth and Tom, desperate for advice, but even their voices were strained. "You need to be careful, Maya," Ruth warned. "There are people in this town who will do anything to keep that gold from leaving. Maybe you should think about leaving, just for a while." But Maya knew she couldn't run. Not now. Not after everything she and Leo had survived. She tried to keep up a brave face for her son, but the fear was always there, lurking in every shadow, every creak of the house. Then, as if fate wanted to test her resolve, disaster struck. Leo, still weak from his illness, slipped on the damp steps outside and fell hard, hitting his head. Maya's scream echoed through the trees as she rushed to her son's side, blood staining the moss. She carried Leo inside, her hands shaking, her heart pounding with terror. For a moment, she thought she might lose him, her only reason for fighting, for staying, for hoping. Maya worked through the night, tending to Leo's wound, praying for the fever not to return. She felt utterly alone, cut off from help, surrounded by enemies and haunted by the weight of her choices. The gold, the house, the legacy, it all seemed meaningless compared to the fragile life of her child. As dawn broke, Maya sat by Leo's bedside, exhausted and afraid. She realized that she might lose everything: the house, the gold, even her son. The darkness pressed in, threatening to swallow her whole. But as the first light crept through the window, Maya made a silent vow. She would not give up. She would fight for Leo, for their home, for the right to choose their own future. No matter what the town, the enemies, or the past threw at her, she would not let the darkness win. The house had tested her, broken her, but it had also revealed her strength. And as Maya watched her son sleep, she knew that the darkest hour was not the end, but the moment before the dawn. The storm that had battered the forest for days finally broke, leaving the world outside the tree stump house glazed in dew and silence. Maya sat at Leo's bedside, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. But as the morning sun crept through the window, she saw color returning to her son's cheeks. Leo's breathing was steady, his fever gone. Relief washed over Maya, fierce and overwhelming. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to hope. But the threats from the townspeople, the broken window, and the rock with its chilling message haunted her. Maya knew she couldn't hide forever. The gold was both a blessing and a curse, and the secret root chamber beneath the house was no longer just a mystery. It was a lifeline, and possibly their only chance at survival. That afternoon, with Leo resting, Maya returned to the lower level. She moved quietly, every sound amplified by her nerves. The hidden door behind the roots was still ajar from her last visit, the cold air seeping out like a warning. She descended the narrow steps, flashlight in hand, heart pounding. The passageway felt different now, less like a tomb, more like a threshold. At the bottom, Maya paused, remembering Samuel Alder's words. "The gold is yours to protect, but its true value lies in the truth it represents." She pressed on, entering the secret chamber. The air was thick with the scent of earth and metal, and her breath fogged in the cold. She moved to the crates, her hands trembling as she pried one open. The straw inside was brittle with age, but beneath it gleamed the unmistakable luster of gold. Maya lifted a bar, its weight shocking, its surface stamped with a government seal and a date from the 1940s. She counted the crates, dozens of them, each filled with gold bars, each one a silent testament to the secrets the house had kept for generations. Maya's mind reeled. She tried to calculate the value, but the numbers became meaningless. It was more money than she could ever spend, more than she could even imagine. But as she looked around the room, she realized the gold was only part of the legacy. The shelves were lined with ledgers, maps, and documents, records of the gold's origins, lists of names, letters from government officials, and Samuel's journal, chronicling the decisions and sacrifices that had led to this moment. She sat at the table in the center of the room, opening the leather-bound book she'd found on the pedestal. The final entries were written in a shaky hand, but the message was clear. If you have found this, you are the last of us. The gold is not just for you. It is for those who come after, for the rebuilding of what is lost, for the hope that endures even in the darkest times. Guard it well. Use it wisely. And remember, the greatest fortune is not in gold, but in the courage to do what is right. Tears filled Maya's eyes as she read. She thought of her grandfather, of the generations who had lived and died in this house, of the sacrifices made to keep this secret safe. She thought of Leo, sleeping upstairs, and the future she wanted to build for him. A future free from fear, from hunger, from the shadows of the past. Maya spent hours in the chamber, documenting everything. She took photos of the gold, the documents, the journals. She made copies of the most important records, hiding them in different places around the house. She knew she would need help, legal advice, protection, maybe even the authorities. But she also knew she had to be careful. The gold was a target, and there were people in Alderwood who would do anything to claim it. As evening fell, Maya returned upstairs, her mind racing with plans. She called Ruth and Tom, asking them to come by. When they arrived, Maya told them everything about the chamber, the gold, the threats, and her fears. Ruth listened in stunned silence, then hugged Maya fiercely. "You're not alone," she said. "We'll help you. We'll protect you and Leo. This town has its secrets, but it also has good people. We'll find a way." With their support, Maya felt a new resolve. She contacted a lawyer in the nearest city, explaining the situation as best she could without revealing too much. The lawyer agreed to help, promising discretion and advice on how to secure the gold and protect her rights. Maya also reached out to a historian at the state university, sending copies of the documents and asking for help in verifying their authenticity. Word spread quickly, as it always did in small towns. Some neighbors came forward with offers of help, while others grew more hostile, their jealousy and suspicion barely concealed. But Maya stood firm. She had the law on her side, the support of her friends, and the truth of her family's legacy. The days that followed were a whirlwind of meetings, phone calls, and careful planning. The lawyer helped Maya set up a trust to protect the gold, ensuring that it would be used for Leo's future and for the good of the community. The historian confirmed the document's authenticity, and soon news of the discovery reached the authorities. Federal agents arrived, their questions sharp but respectful, and Maya showed them everything. The gold, the records, the journals. In the end, the government claimed the gold, citing its origins and the need to preserve history. But Maya was not left empty-handed. She received a substantial reward for her honesty and cooperation, enough to secure her and Leo's future. More importantly, she kept the journals, the documents, and the story of her family's courage, a legacy that could never be taken away. As the forest bloomed with spring, Maya stood on the porch of the tree stump house, watching Leo play in the sunlight. The house was no longer a place of fear and secrets, but a home, warm, safe, and filled with hope. The gold had changed their lives, but it was the truth, the courage, and the love they had found that would endure. Maya knew there would always be challenges, always be shadows at the edge of the woods. But she also knew that she and Leo had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. The secret chamber had given up its treasure, and in doing so, had given them a new beginning, a future built not on gold, but on the strength of their hearts. The days after the gold's discovery were unlike anything Maya had ever known. The house, once a place of cold and uncertainty, now felt alive with possibility. Maya moved through its rooms with a new sense of purpose, her steps lighter, her heart unburdened by the constant fear that had shadowed her for so long. Leo, too, was changed. His laughter returned, echoing through the halls as he played in the sunlit rooms, his cheeks rosy and his eyes bright with hope. But with the gold came decisions, ones that weighed heavily on Maya's mind. The fortune was staggering, but so was the responsibility. The journals and documents made it clear. This was not just a windfall, but a legacy. The gold had been hidden for a reason, meant to be a safeguard for the future, not a prize for the present. Maya knew she could not simply sell everything and disappear. The story of the house and the people who had trusted her family deserved to be honored. The first transformation was practical. With the help of her lawyer, Maya established a trust to secure the assets and ensure that Leo would always have a home. She used a portion of the funds to repair and modernize the house, installing proper heating, plumbing, and electricity. The once drab rooms became warm and inviting, filled with light and color. She created a bedroom for Leo, a kitchen where they could cook real meals, and a study where Maya could work and keep the records safe. But Maya's vision extended beyond her own family. Inspired by the stories in Samuel Alder's journal, she reached out to local charities and shelters, offering anonymous donations to help families facing the same hardships she had endured. She funded scholarships for children in the community, supported the local clinic, and worked with Ruth and Tom to create a food pantry for those in need. The house's legacy of hope was no longer a secret. It became a force for good, rippling outward to touch lives far beyond its walls. The transformation was also personal. Maya found herself growing in confidence, her voice stronger when she spoke at town meetings or advocated for others. She became a fixture in the community, not as the outsider who lived in the old Alder house, but as a neighbor, a friend, and a leader. Leo thrived at his new school, making friends and excelling in his classes. The house, once a symbol of isolation, became a place of gathering and laughter. Yet even as their lives improved, Maya never forgot the lessons of the past. She kept the secret chamber secure, sharing its story only with those she trusted completely. She continued to study the documents and artifacts, working with historians and archivists to preserve the knowledge for future generations. The house became a place of learning, a living museum where the past and present met, and where the values of courage, resilience, and compassion were passed on. One evening, as the family sat together in their newly renovated home, Maya looked at Leo and felt a deep sense of peace. They had come so far, from the edge of despair to a place of safety and hope. The journey had been hard, marked by loss and fear, but it had also revealed strengths they never knew they possessed. The wealth they had found was not just in gold or artifacts, but in the love they shared, the community they had built, and the future they could now shape. Leo snuggled close, his voice soft. "Do you think Grandpa Samuel would be proud of us?" Maya smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her son's face. "I think he hoped we would find all this, and I think he trusted us to do the right thing." Leo grinned, holding up a drawing he'd made of the house as a castle. "We're like the guardians now, right, Mom?" Maya hugged him, her heart full. "Yes, baby, we're the guardians, and we'll make sure this place is always a home, for us, and for anyone who needs it." The transformation was complete, but the journey was far from over. The family had found not just a fortune, but a purpose. And as they looked to the future, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, stronger, wiser, and forever changed by the secrets they had uncovered and the hope they had restored. As the seasons changed and the forest around the tree stump house burst into green, Maya's choices began to ripple outward, shaping not only her family's future, but the very heart of Alderwood. The transformation of the old house from a place of secrets and survival into a beacon of hope became a story that spread quietly at first, then with growing momentum, as more people learned of the kindness and generosity that flowed from its doors. Maya's decision to use the gold for good did not go unnoticed. The food pantry she helped establish with Ruth and Tom became a lifeline for struggling families, its shelves always stocked and its doors always open. The scholarships she funded sent local children to college, some the first in their families to ever dream of such a thing. The clinic, once threatened with closure, flourished with new equipment and staff, all made possible by anonymous donations that everyone soon guessed came from the woman in the Alder house. But the impact was more than financial. Maya's story, her resilience, her refusal to give up, her willingness to share what she had found, became a quiet inspiration. People who had once kept their distance now stopped by with casseroles, tools, or simply to say thank you. Leo was welcomed into the fold, his laughter and energy breathing new life into the town's school and playgrounds. The family that had once been homeless and alone was now at the heart of a community, their journey a testament to the power of hope and the strength found in helping others. Maya never sought recognition. She kept the details of the secret chamber closely guarded, sharing its history only with those she trusted, and with the historians who helped her preserve its legacy. The artifacts and documents were carefully catalogued, some donated to museums, others kept safe for future generations. The story of the Alder house and the network of ordinary people who had risked everything to safeguard hope became a chapter in the town's history, one that would be told and retold for years to come. Yet, for all the good that came from the discovery, Maya knew that the true legacy was not in the gold or the artifacts, but in the choices she made every day. She taught Leo that wealth was a tool, not a goal, that kindness was a currency more valuable than any coin, and that the greatest treasures were the bonds they built with others. The house, once a place of hiding, was now a place of gathering, a home not just for her family, but for anyone in need of shelter, comfort, or a second chance. As word of the family's journey spread beyond Alderwood, people from neighboring communities began to visit, drawn by curiosity and the hope of finding inspiration for their own lives. Some came seeking help, others simply to see the place where a single act of courage had changed so many lives. Maya welcomed them all, her door always open, her story always shared with humility and gratitude. And so, the legacy of the house grew, not as a monument to the past, but as a living promise for the future. Maya's choices had created a ripple effect, touching lives she would never know, inspiring acts of kindness she would never witness. The family's journey from homelessness to hope became a beacon for anyone who had ever felt lost, alone, or afraid to dream. As the sun set over the woods and the lights of the house glowed warmly in the dusk, Maya stood at the entrance, Leo at her side. She looked out at the world, her heart full of gratitude and wonder at how far they had come. She knew there would be challenges ahead. There always were. But she also knew that together they could face anything. And to anyone watching, anyone listening, anyone wondering if hope was still possible, Maya's story offered a simple, powerful call to action. Don't give up. The world is full of hidden doors and second chances. Sometimes the greatest treasures are found in the darkest places. And sometimes the choice to open a door, no matter how heavy, can change everything. If you've been moved by this story, don't let it end here. Reach out, help someone in need, or take a chance on your own hidden potential. The next chapter of hope could begin with you. As summer settled over Alderwood and the forest hummed with life, Maya often found herself standing at the window of the tree stump house, looking out over the land that had once felt so cold and forbidding. The house was alive now, filled with laughter, warmth, and the gentle hum of a community that had grown around it. Yet, even as life settled into a hopeful rhythm, Maya knew that the story of the older house was far from over. There were still secrets hidden in the walls and whispers in the woods. The journals she had preserved hinted at other caches, other families entrusted with similar legacies, and cryptic references to the network that had once spanned the country. Maps with faded markings, letters written in code, and names she didn't recognize suggested that the Alder fortune was only one thread in a much larger tapestry. What had become of the other guardians? What treasures or truths might still be waiting, buried beneath forgotten fields or locked behind rusted doors? Leo, ever the dreamer, would sometimes sit at the kitchen table, poring over the old maps and tracing routes with his finger. "Do you think there are other houses like ours, Mom?" he'd ask, his eyes bright with curiosity. "Maybe there are other families who need help too. Maybe we could find them." Maya encouraged her son's curiosity, knowing that the spirit of exploration and hope was the true inheritance Samuel Alder had left them. She began to correspond with historians and archivists, sharing what she could about the network and seeking clues about the other hidden shelters. Each letter, each conversation, opened new doors, some literal, some figurative, inviting the family to imagine a future filled with purpose and possibility. And so, as the days grew longer and the world outside beckoned, Maya and Leo found themselves standing at the threshold of a new adventure. The house had given them safety, but it had also given them a mission: to seek out the forgotten, to protect the vulnerable, and to keep the flame of hope alive for those still searching in the dark. Their story was far from over. There were mysteries yet to solve, friendships yet to forge, and lives yet to touch. Perhaps somewhere out there another family was waiting for a letter, a key or a sign that they too could find sanctuary and purpose in the most unexpected of places. If you followed this journey and felt the pull of curiosity, don't let the story end here. There are always more doors to open, more secrets to uncover, and more lives to change. Join us for the next chapter, because every ending is just the beginning of another adventure. Subscribe, stay curious, and remember, sometimes the greatest journeys start with a single step into the unknown. The next mystery awaits.